Where were you when you first heard about the Sandy Hook Massacre, and what is your memory of that moment?
I've heard this question before. I was at work. I saw a news scroll regarding that some kids were shot at a school. They didn't really know how many. They didn't know who the shooter was. They didn't have any details. And then slowly over the day, it emerged, that the number was really high, and that the shooter killed himself.
What is your response to the critics who believe that the Sandy Hook Massacre was a conspiracy? Why would they think such a thing?
Well, I think there's anytime there's an event occurs, and usually there's there's someone that might benefit from it, and the folks that don't benefit from it think that the other group somehow made it happen, and they did it on purpose, or they facilitated it somehow, or they were waiting for this opportunity, and so that's how these kind of conspiracy things arise. And I don't think it was a conspiracy in this case. I think certainly the news coverage was pretty thorough, and had there been a real, had it been faked somehow, that certainly would have come out in the press.
What do you believe that the U.S. government should do to prevent tragedies like the Sandy Hook Massacre in the future?
Well, I think probably several things. I think they should try to keep guns out of the hands of people that are mentally unstable. They should restrict the access to high-powered weapons, assault weapons, and the government should know who owns those kinds of weapons, so they can monitor what happens and what people do with it.
What do you believe the effectiveness of arming teachers would be to the safety of students?
I think it's a mixed bag. So I'd say in some cases the person who thought they might want to go into a school and shoot people might think twice if he knew that all the teachers were armed. And on the other hand, having all the teachers with guns raises the possibility that either a student will get the gun and shoot somebody, the teacher will shoot a student, or teachers will shoot teachers. People do stupid things when they're agitated or emotionally compromised, and sometimes school is a stressful place where those things can happen. You throw guns into the mix, and that just makes it worse.
How did you feel emotionally after the Sandy Hook tragedy?
It was pretty disturbing. I'd say there was, just the fact that they were first graders, 6 years old, and they couldn't defend themselves. They couldn't. The teachers tried to protect them by pushing them into a closet, and then the guy just shot them all. So it's pretty disturbing.
How did the Sandy Hook tragedy affect your position on gun control?
I don't think it did that much. I think I've thought about it a little bit more, but basically I don't think there's any real need for citizens to have multiple high-capacity magazine, military-style weapons.
The NRA's response to the Sandy Hook Massacre is federally funded police in every school. Do you believe that this is an adequate solution? Why or why not?
Well, I think it would, in some ways, be effective. I don't. Again, I think someone might hesitate to attack a school where they knew they were armed police, but some schools are huge. They have 4,000 students, and you know, to adequately protect them, you'd need 3, 4, 5, you know, policemen on duty, and you know, it's just financially not a viable way to go.
America has the greatest number of school shootings and deaths worldwide. Why do you think this is the case?
Well, I think it's a mix of availability of weapons. You know, and sometimes they'll, you know, people will talk about a gun culture where, you know, we see guns in the movies all the time. We see, you know, violent acts. We see, you know, even the movies, like people being glorified for, you know, being, you know, being powerful because they have a weapon. And I think people that are mentally disturbed see that kind of stuff and act out. And because guns are so easy to get, they can act out with weapons that are readily available.
Do you also remember when and where you first heard of the Columbine shooting? What was your first reaction to this occurrence?
You know, it was a while ago, but it was a similar kind of feeling. I don't remember exactly where I was, but you know, I just remember the two, you know, boys had this kind of dark and disturbed, you know, lifestyle, and you know, again, they thought that they would, you know, this would be either fun or it would be, you know, get their name in the paper, or they're kind of lashing out at society. You know, they somehow feel unloved or unwanted or outside of, you know, the other people in life, the rest of society, and so they felt the need to attack them. And again, it's just kind of a disturbing combination of mental illness and availability of weapons, which they believe they got from their mother or their father's house.
In your opinion, which tragedy had a more significant influence on our country?
You know, Columbine was pretty serious, but I think the fact that you know, the Sandy Hook one was, you know, the kids were so young, whereas Columbine was, you know, high school age. You know, like when the boys were in high school, and they were sort of shooting at the other kids in high school that maybe bullied them or something. But this was, Sandy Hook was, you know, just you know, shooting little kids. I mean, what kind of, I don't understand what kind of statement the kid was trying to make by that.
One major solution to fixing gun violence in America is to limit magazine size. Do you believe this is reasonable?
I think it's reasonable. You know, certainly every time one of these shooters has to reload, it's kind of the one opportunity that people would get to, you know, disarm them, jump on them, that kind of thing. You know, there's really no need outside of a war zone to have, you know, 30, 50, 100 round, you know, magazines. And so I don't think they're really necessary.
What are your thoughts of these events, especially Sandy Hook, when it comes to the media? Are they exploiting families and not giving enough privacy? Are they immortalizing the shooters?
Well, I mean, they got a job to do to report the story. I think, you know, sometimes the parents want to speak out, and so the media gives them an avenue to do that. Other times the families, you know, didn't want to close the door and have, you know, deal with it privately, and I think the news should respect that. Certainly some reporters will push the boundaries and go over the top, but I haven't heard, too many stories along those lines where the news is over the top, and then, more recently, some of the families were, protesting together, marching to Washington, and there was a bike race or something like that. So they're actually trying to increase the awareness by going out and getting the media to report it. And as far as idolizing the what did you say about the boys?
Idolizing the shooters.
Yeah. So I haven't heard too much on that in that vein. It's a pretty hard. It's a pretty hard case to make to say, like, he wasn't defending himself. He didn't have any reason to shoot these particular kids. And so I haven't heard too many stories along that lines. Someone like the Trayvon Martin shooting. I think there were certainly folks in the news and folks with certain agenda would look at the shooter and find him to be a sympathetic figure, right? So he was, protecting himself or defending himself, and so then you get a bigger split in the media with regard to how that guy is treated.
If you could have America react the way you want to Sandy Hook, what would be your protocol?
Well, I think, some of the things that they're trying to push through the Congress now, like background checks for everybody, including mental health checks, limiting the types of weapons that people can buy and sell, limiting magazine sizes. But I think there's an added piece to that would be, knowing who has, so if we know there's a gun in the house, and then someone in that house gets, committed to a mental institute or whatever, it's like, yeah, they won't be able to buy a gun, but they may already have one. So how do we how do we prevent folks that develop mental problems from, continuing to have access to their guns?